Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hello friends, and today I will be recapping and comparing episodes 5 and 6 of season 1 of Off Campus to the books. And this time it will be both the deal and the very beginning of the score. I'm going to bring that in for episode 6 when we get our bit of a peek at what the next season will be like. That will be fun. But yeah, I definitely have a few more pretty crucial changes to talk about this time. And in my opinion, though 7 and 8, the episodes 7 and 8 really are where the biggest changes have. I believe the seeds of those changes really are first seen in episodes 5 and 6. I mean, not first scene, because they're kind of there from the beginning of just the temperament and stoicism of Garrett, and how his and Hannah's relationship is started. Like, how those changes, it's that thing of like, if you're off by so many degrees and then you keep going, you end up pretty far apart, right? And that's something that happens with a lot of adaptations. Really, truly it does. And so I don't have a lot of like harsh things to say, but I definitely want to talk through what I find to be the biggest changes and see what you guys are thinking, as well as those of you who haven't read the books or don't remember them. If you're surprised by some of these changes, that's really where I want this discussion to be. So as I have been doing with these, I'm going to do the recaps of 5 and 6. I'll go through those as succinctly and kind of quickly as possible, but also giving a bit of my commentary just as enjoying watching it. And then we will get to the section that is the comparison part. And that is where I have taken notes. I have, put a lot of flags in and everything. What I think is really interesting too is that I feel like episode 5 particularly, but the end part of 6 covers kind of the smallest part of the book actually, with Thanksgiving really being kind of a concentrated time. And then there's really not too much left to be covered by episodes 7 and 8, yet at the same time, because of some of the divergence, there's like a lot that they do. So I just think it's all fascinating. Again, before I get into this and get nitpicky, I have great love for these books, but also for the show. And I really have been surprised on the rewatch how much I really was missing, after I finished my reread of the book, which I did end up finishing the full reread of the book, because after I got through the notes on 5 and 6, I only had like 70 pages left, and I was like, I just want to read the rest and see that, and then I will watch I still haven't rewatched episodes 7 and 8 though. I don't rewatch the next episodes until I filmed this, so that I don't start blending them together. I really want to see where it stops. Just for how I'm doing these, right? So I am actually surprised on how I'm missing certain things from the show, and it is kind of bugging me more and more. Again, not enough to completely take away the love of it. It just doesn't feel as faithful as I originally felt upon watching it, having not read the book for, I believe when I checked, it was 2.5 years since the last time I read the goal or the deal. I'm gonna mess them up. I'm sorry. Also because the goal is like right behind me here too, so I can see it in the camera. I didn't realize how much some of those changes were bothering me until I'm rewatching it. And there are certain, in my opinion, key things that have to do with the characters, even though I really do appreciate the consistency of the character, right? Like, if they were going to do these type of things in the show, they really would have needed to completely set up Hannah and Garrett differently. And I really do love how the actors portray them, because the Garrett that they have, that Belmont is portraying, that the writers are, have written, he can't just all of a sudden do some of the things I want him to do. They would have had to start him different from the beginning. So it's like, I can't have the Garrett they created also doing the things I want the book Garrett to do. So I am conflicted on that, but we'll discuss it more when we get there. So anyway, let's get into it, discussing episode 5. And again, I will have I put up the cards for where I start talking about each thing, and then there also will be a time in the description down below if you want to skip ahead to, you know, the analysis part of it if you don't need the recap, because I know not everyone needs the recap for these since they've just watched them. This is something I'm just used to doing from the other shows that I recap where the show isn't available to everyone around the world. And I've had many people tell me that they love my recaps because of course I sound so lame saying it feels like they're getting to watch it. Of course it's not. I'm not acting this out, but they still want to be in on the discussion and they're okay with the spoiler of it. But if you want to go right to the discussion, there will be a link down below and we'll get into the things that I think are the biggest changes about it. So we have episode 5, which is the cold turkey. And just like with episode 4, where we had the warning for sexual assault and the rain info, this one there was a domestic violence warning. And again, I did realize, because this time I was looking for it, I'm not seeing it upon a rewatch. So I don't know how that just like disappears or like what, if it just knows that you know. But I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but I have been like looking and I like don't see it. But then again, maybe they just let the ad kind of like play over that. I don't know. But, I mean, obviously it knows you're rewatching it or whatever, and then you're obviously okay with the warning. But this one has a domestic violence warning. So, we start off, and this whole episode is pretty much going to take place over, like, Thanksgiving weekend. And so, although except for the first, like, 2 scenes, which of course, we had stopped with Hannah playing that kind of the song for Garrett while Garrett was shooting pucks and practicing on the ice. And he looks up and this is the like John Hughes moment and he rushes up to the announcer's box and that's where the episode ended. Gotta remember that. Then it picks up right where that was and they kiss. And before anything else happens, Garrett very astutely is like, are we on the same page? And she's like, friends don't kiss like that. And he's like, I want us to be clear. No Justin, no Snapchats, no deals. That's what they go back and forth about. Then we scooch on over into a sexy montage and we have them just going at it, and we're supposed to see a couple weeks probably pass. And so there's multiple different scenes we get. And so I wrote a list of kind of the different scenes apart from the sex scenes we see. They're playing that song Bed on Fire, which is so catchy. I've listened to that song so many times now. But we see them watching Dirty Dancing together. We see the Liquid IV commercial that he films with Logan. There's her making her grandmother's lasagna for them. There's her working on songwriting with Justin at like, it looks like they're at like the dining hall. And like Garrett is there too, so him and Justin seem to be on a good page. There's them taking pics together. There's lots of orgasms happening. And it's all just, she's with him for sure. There's not going to be anybody else. They're exclusive together. We also get the book cover shot with them on the ice, his backwards hat, although I believe she's wearing his jersey in the shot for the cover. But that's very cute. I love that. So we get that. And we're all like, why was he not wearing a backwards baseball cap this whole show? Because he looks fucking amazing. But anyway, we have that montage, which ends with, during an orgasm, Hannah accidentally answering her phone for her. But then we skip to when it seems like it must be like a different time of this, or else she hangs up and then calls her mom back. But she's on a video call with her mom and they're talking about Thanksgiving plans. It's clear that Hannah's not going to be going home. Her mom asks if she's going to stay with Allie and she says no. She says she's going to go to Friendsgiving with Garrett. And then eventually Garrett comes on the screen too and says hi to the mom. The parents say how they're big fans of his and that the dad has been watching him and is super proud and all these cute little things. And oh, doesn't it just make you wish they would have got flights home and that Garrett would have went with her. That would have been so cute. I would have been cool with that change, by the way. But tis not to be. Because then it skips to a scene where Phil has showed up at practice. He's a total asshole. But he is inviting Garrett to Thanksgiving again. He wants to show that he's changed. He wants Garrett to meet Cindy before the wedding. And Garrett is just like, has no interest in that. But his father's really pressuring him. And he's saying, I've changed. Okay, Phil, we'll see about that. Then the next scene, we have them coming out of class, which this must be kind of like the last one before Thanksgiving or something. And she's like waving bye to Justin. And then they have this kind of moment just kind of sitting on off to the side where Garrett asks why she doesn't go home for Thanksgiving. And she drops a few little tidbits that we get. She says that he was an athlete, the man who raped her, and so her town doesn't feel like home anymore. There's a lot of bad memories associated with it now. And that the man who had assaulted her was an athlete. His mom was the mayor. And Garrett clicks that, oh, did he play hockey? And she's like, yeah, which, you know, does click back to a scene earlier where she said that hockey's the most violent. But, you know, she had all these stats about it. And Garrett had, at the time, didn't know her very well. And is kind of like, whoa, like, calm down, what are you saying? Which was his own defensiveness about violence, right? But he is like, fuck, you know, like that makes sense, right? So then Garrett mentions that his stuff with his dad is complicated, and it's clear up to this point he still hasn't really explained it to her, like why he hates his dad. It's just more of like things are complicated. Like when I win, he nods at me, and when I lose, he says nothing. But, you know, he ends up asking like if she would go to Thanksgiving with him, and she says, if that's what you want me to do. And she's like, maybe give him another chance. She'll go with him. But she does say, she's like, give him another chance if you want to. Again, it's very clear in this. She doesn't know the extent of what he's giving another chance for, right? For all that she knows, it appears there's just animosity there. Maybe there's too much pressure from his dad. He hasn't told her. That's definitely something I'll want to discuss later on. But then we have the next scene, and we have Logan and Jules talking. I think he's practicing is what this was. Sorry, I didn't write that note, but she's kind of busting his balls about Hannah, and he changed the subject when Jules is getting a call from their mom, and we learn that their mom is currently at a rehab facility. She's going to be there over Thanksgiving. Jules asks if he wants to go and see her, and John is like, I have no interest in doing that. And he's like, I don't care about that at all. Then we have the next scene, and we have Tucker with the game plan for Thanksgiving. And since he's not able to go home this time, he has a whole plan for everything. He has roles for everybody. But then he starts realizing that not everyone's going to be there. So we find out that Dean is road tripping. Him and Bo are headed back home. Garrett is leaving. He's going to be taking Hannah to his dad's. And so now it's just going to be, well, it won't just be them, but it's going to be Logan and Jules and Tucker there. And then they're going to invite, basically the strays are going to get invited, which I know this is we're going to see them as kind of our comic relief through this episode, but I do love that about Tucker. And they're actually, when I first moved to, sorry, this is commentary from the side, okay? You're here for the personal touch. The first like 2 years I was here in North Dakota, I was making new friends. And so I could have gone home for Thanksgiving, but I was still working for, Maurice's, which we had to work on Black Friday. So if I went home for Thanksgiving, then I would literally have to come back that night to work, right? So my friends did Friendsgiving a couple of years, and it was so much fun. Like, it was so much fun. So I really admire Tucker for doing this, even if they're going to stress him out. Okay. I love it. But anyway, he shares his list with Logan, Tucker shares his list with Logan of all the things they have to do to prep the food, which is really cute. Okay, then we have a scene, which we will see a couple of times, where they're at Malone's and Hannah is saying goodbye to Allie. She's saying that they got some weird vibes about Phil, and so she isn't quite sure what's going on there. Allie I can't remember what she says back about that, but I think she says, like, you're just there to support him. That's what the cute stuff is about. And she also makes a comment about you're going to be having hot sex for Thanksgiving because, of course, Allie, her brain is there. But then Allie gets a text message and she says the bus is there. And Hannah is like, I mean, Garrett can drive you. And she's like, no, I like the bus. And Hannah's like, no, you don't. You hate the bus. But she gets into a vehicle that is definitely not a bus. And we'll come back to that later on. All right. Next, we have a scene, and we have Mama Tuck on the phone with Tucker, and there is Thanksgiving prep. It's super cute. And then we have Birdie and friends starting to arrive, and Tucker is starting to get stressed out of if they're going to have enough food for everybody. Then with the next scene, we have Hannah and Garrett arriving at Phil's, and they're still sitting in the car, and Garrett is having second thoughts, but Hannah is like, hey, if you don't want to go in, we'll just drive. We'll just go. She brought a key lime pie. She's like, this is the wrong kind of pie. Why'd I bring this? She's being very cute. I love her. And Garrett is obviously very stressed, but they decide to stay. And she says, if you squeeze my hand 2 times, I know we're going to go. We'll just get up and we'll leave, and you don't have to worry about it. So she gives him an out, which I think is very just emotionally intelligent of her, and I love that. But then we get inside, and Cindy greets them. She's so happy to see them. There's pictures of baby Garrett, little Garrett, but he's always in hockey gear in all of them, which, you know, I wonder what his dad loves most about him. And then we find out the Rangers versus Bruins is happening, which is Phil's team versus Garrett's team. And Garrett is like, I would like to give her the tour if that's okay. And he's like, sure, sounds good. You do that. I'll be in the kitchen, with the game if you know, or not in the kitchen, in the living room watching the game if you want to join. Okay, then we do a quick scene to the frat house. Things are getting overloaded. I didn't write down the details for this because every time we switch to the frat house, it's basically to relieve some tension or to do a scene change. So it's fun, it's cute what's happening with the frat, but it's really not the full meat, pardon the pun, of the Thanksgiving episode, at least until there's some stuff with Jules and John later. All right. But now we go to another scene, and Garrett is ending the tour with his bedroom, which is now plastered in Phil Graham. Like, literally, one of the notes, there's a life-size fucking Phil Graham in the corner in his hockey uniform, which is crazy. But it has all his merch, you know, because there are events that he goes to with it. And he will do signings and do things like that. That is something that, you know, retired pro athletes would definitely do. Garrett says, like, he went to boarding school after his mom died, so it doesn't really feel like his bedroom anymore. There is a cute, I think Garrett says this. He's like, Hannah's mom wants her to be happy, but, like, Phil isn't like that. Hannah ends up asking, like, if you woke up and you couldn't play hockey, would you miss it? And he says it's the only thing that I'm good at, which is a lie. He's evading. And he ends up saying that he thinks he'd be relieved if he couldn't play hockey anymore. Which, again, I think that is an interesting take on Garrett. So we'll come back to that later on. But then Allie calls, and so Garrett leaves her to talk with Allie for a few minutes. And we have that. Okay, now we go back to the frat house, and again, it's overloaded. There's more and more people showing up. Tucker's getting stressed about it. But now we have the bit of the confrontation between Logan and Jules, where Jules has stolen some of the marshmallows, and she wants to bring them, Jules wants to bring them to their mother. Jules wants Logan to care, and he just doesn't. He's like, I don't want to see her. I just want to have a good Thanksgiving with our friends. And more friends arrive. Okay, then we have the scene of Phil and Garrett watching the game. There's a reminder that Garrett did a practice with the Bruins, which will be important for the show. We've seen, this is a second reference of it, so they're keeping that reference alive, as you can tell. Like, that was first shown in episode 2 when Hannah was looking at his Instagram, and now there's a mention of it again. One of the things to remember, and this I learned from, there's this channel I watch. Marissa is the name of the creator, who she does The Romance of Hockey. And she really explained to me what it means to be drafted while you're still in college. And the way that it works in hockey is that you don't immediately get called up always, right? Like, I think it feels that way to a lot of us because of the immediate example of Shane and Ilya, where they were first round draft picks and were immediately, like, they didn't go to college. They went into pro sports right away at 18. Whereas with Garrett, he's been he's been drafted by the Bruins, and they can call him up at any time, and he would then have to decide to go or to finish school and possibly miss that opportunity. And we learn a bit here that Phil did start with the Rangers at 18. And there's a tiny bit of humanizing moment here where he actually gives Garrett a bit of props, where he's saying, like, it was a lot to take on at 18, and it might be smarter that you're waiting a bit. Kind of how he words it. Again, we're not going to give Phil too much fucking credit, okay? He doesn't deserve it, but that it, like, two things can be true. He can be a piece of shit, and he can understand the world of hockey, okay? And him saying that, and I don't know, kind of trying to be supportive with it is whatever it is. Okay, then we go to the phone call between Allie and Hannah. I won't go over everything that is being said. Eventually, Hannah calls Allie out for being distracted. She's like, I can hear your nails clicking away on the phone. You're talking to Sean. And she says, I'm definitely not talking to Sean. And also, while they're on the phone, she's kind of looking around the room, and she ends up seeing, like, this picture of Garrett and his mom at one of Garrett's birthdays. And she pulls it off the wall, and she sees an indent in the wall, which I think we might know this already, but either way, we'll learn it in this episode. So I'm just going to say that wasn't Garrett's dad who made that dent. That was Garrett who did. And that picture is over the top of that dent in the wall there. But anyway, Allie ends up hanging up on her. She says, gobble, gobble, love, love, or something like that. Okay, then we have the next scene, which shows Jules showing up at the rehab center with something for the mom, which they're not allowed to see her yet because she hasn't been there that long, and you're not allowed to have guests for so many days. But John shows up too, and I believe he brought the tacos. I don't know, he brought something and Jules had something, and they also give the mom some marshmallows and say she'll understand what it means. And Jules is very touched that John showed up. And then they say, let's go to the hardware store. We have a tradition to continue. And we'll see what that is shortly. Okay, then we go to the frat house, and Tucker forgot his mama's advice, and he forgot to pat dry the bird. And so when they drop it in the boiling oil out in the yard, it explodes. So that is quite intense that happens. All right, now we go into probably the most intense part of the episode. And so there's a lot of things going on here. So we're sitting down to the meal. Everything looks good. Garrett's telling Cindy, thank you. A cute little comment with Hannah that, oh, some of this is gluten-free. I didn't know, but I'm glad. And Hannah's like, yes, there's some stuff I can eat. Cindy said that she made Garrett's mom's mac and cheese and hoped that that was okay. And Garrett, is even being a little touchy. He's like, it's great. Thank you. And then it's time to say grace. And they all go to hold hands. Now, Cindy has been wearing this sweater that goes all the way down her hand. But when she reaches across to hold Garrett's hand, because we have Garrett and Hannah on one side of the table and Phil and Cindy on the other. And when they reach across, her shirt comes up a little bit. Let's say her shirt was like this. And when she reaches, it goes like this. And there are dark blue and purple bruises on her wrists. And so while Phil is praying, Garrett is having flashbacks. And so we end up they show over and we see him squeeze Hannah's hand twice. And it's just awful. He's having flashbacks of it. And so Phil tries to send Cindy away, I think to get a different sweater or a different something. And Garrett jumps up and says, no. And then he is like frozen. He doesn't say anything more. And Phil is just kind of like, what's happening? And Hannah says, you know what? I'm not feeling good. Let's go. So she helps him in that moment, and they start walking outside, and they didn't even bring their coats with. And so Garrett is just freaking out and like having this moment, and Hannah's like, give me the keys. I'm going to drive. And he tries to be like, no. And she's like, Garrett, no, give me the keys. Well, he probably didn't have them because I think they were in his coat. But then Cindy runs out with their coats, and Cindy apologizes and says that Phil felt awful after what he did. It's not who he is. And Garrett is like, that's a lie. And this is who he is. And I know that because I've lived through it all my life. And he says, please leave. That's what Garrett says to her. He says, please leave, please. And Cindy just says, it's complicated. And I don't, of course it was intentional, but what struck me upon the second time reading it is that's what Garrett always says to Logan. He's even said it to Hannah when they ask what's up with him and Phil. He'll just say, it's complicated. But that can mean so many things. And when you don't let people in and they don't know, what can they do about it, right? And we'll see that come up again. But it just really felt like an echo to me of like, you can't assume people will just understand. But in this case, Garrett exactly understands what's happening. He's watched it happen before. It's happened to him. And so Cindy just saying it's complicated, well, you can't bullshit a bullshitter, right? And I could make a joke about Garrett being a professional bullshitter after his philosophy class, but we won't. It's too serious now. But it's very intense. So then we are on the ride home, which is very tense. Garrett is having flashbacks. He's breathing deeply. He's absolutely having a panic attack. He keeps clenching his fists. He's feeling so like these violent feelings that he's having while Hannah's driving. I did do a note here of just how great Belle's facial acting is, and just as he's going through everything of like obviously being very angry but also being very triggered by what he is seeing and how Phil brings that up in him. And then finally Hannah pulls over. He's having a panic attack, she can tell, and he spills a bit more. He says like, I couldn't protect my mom, and Hannah realizes that it also happened to him, that this isn't just that he witnessed domestic violence, but that he was a victim of it as well. I mean, of course, the children are always a victim of it, whether they get hit or not, but he was a victim of the violence as well. And Garrett says, he's like, I'm just like him. Like Cindy was afraid of me. And I would be just like him. And she's like, you would never, hurt me so much or hurt me at all like that. And also it's just, he should have told her sooner. Like really, that's what I was feeling while watching this, is that, this show, Garrett isn't going to be someone who shows that, but I really wish he would have, I wish he could have. But then we go to the next scene and they are playing turkey hockey on the ice with the burnt bird. I can't say I really understand that or how they would be allowed. I feel like that's almost a form of vandalism that they would be doing that. But it's supposed to be a cute movie type scene. And Jules and Logan end up arriving with their marshmallow guns they've made at the hardware store, and they get into a little fight there. And then we have a scene at Malone's, which also people, I guess, are just able to break in wherever they want to. And Hannah made them sandwiches out of cold turkey, which is kind of adorable. Though they have turkey smooches. Are turkey smooches or tuna melt smooches worse for you? You let me know what you think down below. And then she gives him the picture that she took from his room, the one of him and his mother. And she says, my therapist used to tell me that you can't let the bad memories erase the good ones, which is very sweet. So yeah, then we get a group video chat of Tucker and Logan and the gang, and they are talking to Hannah and Garrett, and then they patch in Dean, and we see Dean join, and he is obviously shirtless. We hear that he's in New York. They're like, are you seriously sleepy already? And then Allie makes a, or not Allie, we'll get there. Hannah makes a joke about him being naked, and he says, Wellsies, don't stoop to their level. And then we end the call on Dean, and he says, they didn't see you. And we pan over to Allie in her underwear standing by the window. So that is where we end episode 5, which of course just brilliantly left us hanging to lead into the next episode. Like I said, they really have these set up in pairs quite nicely. So now we go into episode 6, which is the breakaway. All right. And this episode is where we're getting a peek at what's been going on with Allie and Dean in the background. Now, I want to know if you watched the book, if you watched the show when you started to suspect the Dean and Allie stuff was happening, which episode you started to suspect it in, because I'll be honest, I didn't suspect it until the episode before. And honestly, they were making some pretty obvious hints at it. So I feel like they totally got me. And I mean, I think part of it is that the first time I watch it, I wasn't expecting them to be hinting at the Allie and Dean stuff yet, just because of the fact that their book is number 3. I didn't think they were, they were also setting up Logan really well, which is great. I mean, I love that they were fleshing out all the characters and not only have the focus on Garrett and Hannah. Like, I think one of the things we've learned is that we want more than one movie's worth of a couple together, but also in a romance novel, there isn't necessarily enough to make a, 8-episode run only focused on Garrett and Hannah and be with them alone every moment of it. Like, I just don't think you can do that. So I think, but I really was feeling that with Logan's pining over Hannah, with the stuff with his mom. I really thought that Logan story is where we were going next. And so for them to pull the Allie and Dean stuff in, I just wasn't expecting it until the cold turkey. Like, I'll tell you this, the second that I knew it was when she got in a vehicle. I was like, it's him. But you're supposed to think that. So again, I don't think I was any cleverer or ahead of anyone else. But in hindsight, of course, it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, let's get into the breakaway. I want to go through this one as swiftly as I can because I have a lot of stuff to talk about in the comparison part, and these episodes get so long to edit. So basically, we start off scene 1 back where we were at the end of episode 3, which is Allie getting dropped on the couch in the frat when Garrett starts following Hannah's clothes up to his room where she's waiting for him in his jersey. So now we get to know what was happening downstairs. So this is after Malone's, after karaoke. Hannah's trying to make a move on Garrett, and Garrett had tucked Allie in on the couch. So right after, we have Dean stumble in with 2 women. So the woman from the bathroom scene, as well as another, and they are going to be having a threesome with Dean, I guess, is the plan. And so we have Dean with these 2 ladies. He falls over the side of the couch, falls onto Allie, and they immediately start bantering right away. And when the 2 ladies decide they don't need Dean with them, they head out of there. And Dean says, "Are you happy now?" And she says, "A little bit." And they end up going out to the backyard to smoke a blunt and chat together. So we have Dean point out that he's listened to everything she said in the bathroom about how things were with Sean and what Sean isn't sticking up for her. Allie says like her parents were beautiful and they were in love and she wants that, but she doesn't want to be tied down. And Dean says something really beautiful. He says, people who care about you will understand. And if they don't, then they're not your people, which I thought was a very great line here. Dean shares that he never had a girlfriend. He's like Six Flags. Everyone wants a ride. They're here for a good time, not for a long time. And then he ends up saying, when you call me, when you break up, because that's the thing. She isn't fully broke up with Sean yet in this one. She says, like, when you break up, call me. And so she takes his number and puts it in as do not call, which we now know the do not call is who she's going to call very shortly. Because then the next scene we have is after Drunk Shakespeare, when she pulls out her phone and she calls a do not call. And then we see that Dean is actually out back. She comes out the other door and they end up talking on the phone until they get down and they end up facing one another. And she says she wouldn't call, but she did. And after their bit of banter, he's like, so you do like roller coasters? And she says, I fucking love them. So then we have a sex montage of Dean and Allie, but it's supposed to be a secret. Yes, yes, yes. She tells him it's going to be the last time that it's a secret. She says it every time they're banging. Yes, yes. So much fun. But now we're seeing how they snuck around. So there's multiple scenes where we'll see that they were doing it when other stuff was happening. The one that is the grossest to me is him banging her over the ice machine at Malone's. No, thank you. Why is everybody meeting up to smooch or fuck at Malone's? And is it Della? Does she not have cameras? Because come on, why are we doing this? But there's one where they're in the tub with a sex toy and like Tucker has to come in and she has to hide underwater. And there's one where they're at Allie and Hannah's dorm, and it's when Hannah and Garrett are watching Dirty Dancing, and like they knock over the popcorn bowl, and we see Dean going down on Allie in her bedroom trying to keep quiet. So we see all these different times where they're fucking and trying to keep it secret, and Dean is up for it. And then we get to the Thanksgiving road trip, where the scene starts with that same scene in episode 5 where Allie is talking with Hannah about Garrett, and then she says she's getting in the bus, and she gets in a car, and Bo is actually driving it. And so she's road tripping home with Bo and Dean. And very quickly we find out that Bo's sister is someone named Joanna Maxwell, and they now have the same agent, I guess, which that's the agent that Allie gets in episode 2, and her boyfriend isn't being supportive about it. Or maybe it is episode 3, I think, because that's what like led into the spiral she was having and everything. And we also know too, I should point it, like she ends up breaking up with Sean after that scene where they're out on the porch. We don't re-show that scene, but she is broken up with Sean fully now and everything. So anyway, Bo and Allie, I wrote, they're completely soulmates. They love show tunes. They love musicals. And Dean is flirt texting Allie while they're in the car that he would like to meet up with her sometime this week. Then we have the scene fully from Allie's perspective when she is talking with Hannah on Thanksgiving. She's texting Dean, and she ends up going to his penthouse. Then we go to his penthouse, which he opens, and his family is very rich. And none of the rest of his family is home because he is supposed to go back to campus early for practice and everything. So his family is in like the Hamptons or wherever they went. And he gives her the tour of the place. She jokes with him, okay, are you going to show me what your move is? Because it's just me. What do you really want to do? And then they end up playing chess together and talking a bit by the gorgeous view of the city, which is amazing. We learn that he has a sister, Summer. He has a brother named Nick. It becomes strip chess, which leads to sex. And then we end up at the scene again where we saw at the end of the episode, which I didn't mention at the very beginning. I'm so sorry. The episode does pick up right where we ended it, where he's like talking with Allie, and then we do the flip back to everything. But now we're back here again, and as he's on the phone with his friends, she starts to freak out and put her clothes back on, and she says this is getting too serious. And he's like, we're not hurting anyone. And she's like, well, if Sean finds out I hooked up with you less than 2 days after breaking up with him, I'm a horrible person, blah, blah, blah. She really is like taking all of this on and kind of putting it on Dean, which, yes, Dean is a fuckboy and everything, but it's not his guilt what her decisions are. He's made himself available, like the roller coaster that he says he is, and she's choosing whether to be with him or not, right? That's not his fault. But you can tell he's getting some feels for sure. It's all gotten a bit too romantic. All right. Now we leave Allie and Dean for a bit and we go to Hannah is waiting for Garrett in his room. She's wearing his sweatshirt. She's working through the song lyrics that Justin has written so far. He's gotten home. He's super tired. So he lays down on the bed and he's like, just keep playing for me. And he's listening to her sing. She thinks it's so beautiful. But when she asks, he's like, yeah, the lyrics are, I don't quite understand them. And she does say, she's like, well, originally the song was supposed to be about having a crush on Justin, but like, I don't really have that anymore. So now I don't know what to do. And Garrett's like, well, you just say, hey, asshole, this song isn't working. Which is so Garrett. I love it so much. But we explained that it's only 2 weeks until the showcase and she doesn't think that the song is working. And she starts singing a little song again and says like, Garrett loves me. And Garrett says, I do. And he says, I do love you, Wellesley. And she says, I love you too back. And then they start having sex. And I wrote my note for me. I love you sex is the best kind. Don't we know it? So good for them. Then we have a scene of Allie and Hannah. And Allie explains that she was not sexting Sean. She says she thinks she needs to have a fling. And Hannah's like, the last time you tried to do that, it didn't go well. And she explains that maybe I just need a fuck buddy. And Hannah's like, okay, well, good luck with that. Then we have a scene in the dining hall where Hannah has taken Garrett out for lunch to the dining hall, which is so cute and so college. Like, I don't know another way to say this. It's so adorable that they did that. Okay, that is such real life. I remember doing that in college myself. The date is the dining hall. But the guys end up joining. And we have a moment of tension here where they're going to be doing a fundraiser for the Hurricanes, which is a local youth hockey group. And Logan asked Garrett again for one of Phil's jerseys. He didn't get them when he went home for Thanksgiving and he was supposed to. Logan's like, hey, I can just call your dad. It's fine. And Garrett's like, it's complicated. Like, I could sign a jersey. And he's like, yeah, but like, you weren't a pro for how many years? Like, this is really helpful for the kids. Now, I completely understand Logan's point here, and we'll get into it more later. But Logan was he needed help to be in hockey. Hockey's very expensive. One of the most expensive sports for kids to be in. And raising money that way is like the only way that Logan was able to get into hockey as it was. So from his point of view, he's kind of just seeing Garrett as being lazy and being uncomfortable talking to his dad. So I'm just pointing out he's going to be willing to like, well, I'll just talk to your dad. Like, what's the big deal, man? Like, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. It's for the kids. But then Hannah pipes up that what if they host it at Malone's? So that's what we then skip into. We have Justin and his band singing. They're taking requests. Dean is the MC for this. He explains that there is a silent auction, so please make sure you go and bid on everything. He says the band is taking requests, and he actually picked Dirty Little Secret, which he tells Allie that he played for her. He says, I can keep a secret. I'm very good at it. He's like, we can keep having fun, and he is fucking her hardcore. Okay, very much. Then we see in the corner, Garrett is kind of holding court with the younger players. They have a game against St. A's tomorrow. So we have Puck Bunnies go over and are chatting. And then we cut over to Allie being like, why are you okay with Garrett like flirting with all the girls and everything? And she's like, well, I trust him. He's not interested in those girls, which I'm like, good for you. And then Allie actually suggests a song, and it's like You and Your Hand Tonight, and Dean cracks up. Like, I just love that about him because he loves this banter and this sparring with her that she's, I mean, in all honesty, she didn't make him work for it for quite a ways in what we've seen so far. But now she's making him work for it, and he feels like she matches him so well. And so he's just like, it's really cute in my opinion. He just thinks it's hilarious. But he calls her from across the room, and he says, I don't just want any girl. I want to hook up with you. Okay, the next scene we have, let's see. We have a scene between Hannah and Garrett, I think. And they send, Hannah goes to help Logan out and gets a freshman go sell some raffle tickets. And then Hannah talks to Garrett, and Garrett is like, have you talked to Justin yet? Then we have Dean back at the mic. He shares that one of the greatest ones they have is they have Phil offered box seats for silent auction. Garrett has a problem with Logan. He goes up to talk to him, and he's like, you went behind my back to talk to my dad. And he's like, Logan is like, I understand shitty parents. And Garrett is like, you don't understand. And Logan does not know what Garrett is talking about. So to him, he just thinks Garrett is being kind of a stuffy rich kid. Like, let's be honest, that is what he's saying. And Logan kind of calls him out of like, you don't understand, you know, what is there to not understand? Like, do you understand how expensive this is? And he's like, there's things more important than money. And it's like, to Logan, he's like, says someone who has money. And again, if you just tell your fucking friend who's supposedly your best right-hand man, he wouldn't be dealing with Phil. Like, it's so frustrating here at this point. There's so much going on. Okay, then though we switch to the scene where the After Hours gang plays Yellow Haze without asking Wellesley's permission. And it, like, just as we think, like, there's words like pour and yellow haze, and like, it very much gives a feeling of pee, and Allie calls it out, and it's catchy but awkward is how it is. So then we have a scene of Hannah kind of like confronting Justin, and he ends up kind of confronting back. She's like, the lyrics don't make sense. And she's like, it doesn't sound like me. And he calls her back out. He's like, the song doesn't sound like you because you don't share anything of yourself. And he's like, I'm really proud of this, and I don't think this is working between us. And they end up having a friendship collaboration breakup, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, I understand where he's coming from in the same way. Because Justin's trying to do his best, but he can't, you know, if he's making stuff up, it's not going to sound like Hannah because he doesn't know what is driving her and what is calling to her, you know? So he's just doing his level best, right? But then we have a scene of Dean on the mic again, and we get a mention of someone named Grace Ivers who won something. That is a little something to remember later on. Then he on there's like, if there's any last changes of heart, the photo booth is out of order, Dean says. And sure enough, Allie has a change of heart and meets Dean in there. And says, don't think, just tell me what you want, Alley Cat. And she says, come to my place in an hour. And then the next, we have Hannah trying to write in the corner at a booth. And she tells, that's why I was confused, because Justin and I broke up. That's what it said. For my note, I was like, what? She's not with Justin. Anyway, I'm so sorry. My brain today couldn't handle that. But she tells Garrett they broke up. And Garrett says, that's something I wasn't expecting my girlfriend to tell me about another guy. But Hannah encourages Garrett to talk to Logan. And she's saying, tell someone. Garrett doesn't seem too excited to do that. But he tells her that, or she tells him that she's going to go home, work on the song. Which, by the way, that's where Allie will be. She tells Garrett she'll be at the game tomorrow with my I Love Garrett Graham sign. And he's like, there will be so many of those. I hope I know which one is yours. Which is like, he's such a little shit, and I love it. That is so cute. So then we go to Allie and Dean. Allie got super sexy for Dean. One of the notes someone pointed out to me, a girl named Stella actually has the room across the hall from Allie and Hannah, and that is someone else to remember for the future as well. We love it. But then he's literally like, fuck me. And they do. They fuck on the couch. But then we have Hannah on the way home. She's messaged Allie to say, let's have a girls' night, which, you know, she did just say she needs to work on writing the song, but either way. And so Allie is like, hustle, you have to get out of here. And so he hops up and he's like, but you look so good. He just really doesn't want to go. But then after he has left, just a minute or two later, she notices that his jacket is there. And so she grabs his jacket and there's a knock on the door. And it's Sean. And Sean sees how she's dressed in her underwear and a robe and is holding someone else's jacket. And he just says, you really can't be alone, can you? And leaves and makes her feel like absolute shit. Then the final scene of this episode, which sets up, you know, our final arc that we'll have in the last 2 episodes, we have Hannah actually closing down Malone's. And as she's leaving, she overhears some guys saying that a guy named Aaron Delaney is the St. A's new center, which would be the, you know, person playing across from Garrett. A lot of times they would be going against each other. And Hannah then looks it up. This is someone we've actually seen walk by in like episode 1, I believe, of the hockey game when she's working. There's someone who walks by that she like doesn't want them to see her. And this guy, Aaron Delaney, he's her rapist. And so we have Hannah, and I wonder if she's imagining this scene, if she's imagining Garrett going out to face this guy, because the scene in her mind, it is nighttime. This game is going to be during the day, the next day, which we'll see when we like see this happen. So I wonder if she's picturing Garrett going head to head with Delaney as she's having this panic attack with these flashbacks of things. I wonder if that's what that's supposed to be. And we'll see too when I rewatch 7 and 8, because I know that 7, having already watched it before, 7 is almost a real-time episode over the periods of the hockey game as Hannah is spiraling and like dealing with that her boyfriend is facing off against her rapist. But this scene that they're showing of him, like, it is literally 11:30 at night right now. So her seeing the guys line up and go out and him end up face to face with Delaney, that's not happening right now. So it must be her imagining it happening later. But either way, it's going to be Garrett versus Delaney. And she's having a panic attack in like the middle of town, really, which is quite sad and hard to watch. But okay, that is my recaps there of episodes 5 and 6. Let's get into what I think the main changes are here that really start to diverge quite sharply for me. I made a list, and this time I think I did a better job. So starting with Thanksgiving now, backing up a bit, changes to the deal. The things that I think have become most prevalent of a change now are in the book. Well, not let's not do that. Let's just go through them point by point. One of the main things for me is that Garrett's dad in the book is much more brusque about his attitude. He's much less apologetic. He is not even trying to feel redeemed at all in the book. He doesn't think he did anything wrong. The man is completely in denial. And Garrett actually has, you know, very hostile conversations with him where the dad is just saying, you're being a little shit, don't sass me. Like, he's pushing him a lot. Whereas in the show, they definitely have softened Phil. That doesn't soften what a jackass it is. I think, you know, it is with purpose of like, he's putting on this facade of being different, and we don't see him as almost like a mustache twirling thing. And it's almost kind of trying to give this vibe of like, is that just what hockey makes you? Was he just violent because of that? Like, I don't know. But in the book, Garrett's dad is much more clearly an asshole from the jump with him, right? And I think that leads to some very interesting things along the way. Maybe I'll just hit on all the things to do with his dad right away, because I did it in order in my little book, but let's just hit on all of those. So that actually leads to this one scene that I think I've alluded to previously, in that Hannah and Garrett share a lot more of their trauma earlier on with one another. And it's actually a lot of their bonding experience. Like, they don't share everything before they're actually dating, but they share a lot, you know. And what gets Hannah to fully open up about her rape is, Garrett shares back a bit of what he watched his mom go through and how his dad, did that. And then how once his mom was dead, the violence switched to him. And he was, a big victim of his dad until he finally fought back and he realized that, he could punch back. Now, Garrett doesn't become like a punch back, but once he stops his dad from hitting him and punches him back once, that really ends like the violence, but it doesn't end the emotional gaslighting or manipulation or anything like that. So that means like when he invites him to Thanksgiving, the dad's really trying to muscle him into it. There isn't any promises of change or sweet words. He's like, I want you to meet the lady that I'm going to marry. You're coming home or else. But it's also kind of like, what or else can he do? Even in this book with how they change the final act, it's like, what is he holding over his head really in this last, at this time? But anywho, so continuing along that line too, so because he opened up with her earlier, she knows that the father is abusive when they go to Thanksgiving. So her eyes are fully open to what she's walking into. And it means that Hannah doesn't play nice with Phil. And I fucking love it. Like the Phil here too is very like, she's a distraction. You're not just fucking her. You like her. You need to get rid of her. Like her career, it could split you between it, He even makes this comment. I wonder if I have it saved here. One of the comments he makes about, oh yeah, here we go. I'll read this. He says, well, the music industry is a tough one to break into. Requires a lot of hard work and perseverance, my father pauses, and an incredible amount of focus. I'm well aware of that. Hannah's lips formed in a tight line. Professional sports is the same way, my dad says. Requires the same level of focus. Distractions can be costly. Isn't that right? And Garrett says, some distractions are worth it. Which, way to go for Garrett. But then before they leave that day, before dessert, I think it even is he says, she's making you lose sight of the game. And Garrett is like, I'm not the only player on this team. Like, it's not all on my shoulders, which good for you, Garrett, for saying that. And the dad is just like, you need to get rid of her. And he's like, fuck off. Garrett even says, you need help. Seriously, old man, you need some fucking help. And I really hope you get it before you hurt that wonderful woman more than you already have. So he staggers out of the kitchen and he ends up talking with Cindy, who is a bit scared of him. But they're leaving. And he asks Hannah to go to the car. So in this case, it's like he's saying, we're going to leave before dessert. Go start the car, Hannah. And Garrett speaks with Cindy. And he says, thank you so much for Thanksgiving. He can tell how strained it is. We find out that Cindy gave up her previous job that she had. She moved in with Phil after only 3 weeks, which, by the way, that is something I meant to call out, which I forgot to write in my notes. Phil acts like they're moving too fast, and he moved his girlfriend in after 3 weeks, and now he's marrying her, and he made her quit her job to be with him. And Garrett, having a girlfriend in college where they're both like young professional, focused on their professions, is moving too fast. Like, fuck you, Phil Graham. Like, he's so much more infuriating in the book. Like, and I'll talk about why I think they're making those changes shortly. But he says to her, he says, I'm not going to hurt you, because she kind of, backs away from Garrett a little bit. And she's like, oh, no, honey, no. And he's like, you did think I was going to hurt you, and it's okay. I'm not taking it personally. I know what it's like. But I just need you to know something. And Cindy says, what is it? And he says, he did it to me and my mom too, okay? He abused us physically and verbally for years. And Garrett continues, he says, he's not a good man. He's dangerous and violent and sick. He's sick. He says a bunch more. I'm not reading the whole thing, but the point is, Garrett, he does not leave any ambiguity. He does not dance around it. He doesn't use euphemism. He lists the things his father's done. And he even says this. He says, anyway, I'm not going to drag you out of here over my shoulder or call the cops and tell them there's domestic abuse going on in this house. It's not my place and I won't interfere. But I need you to know a couple of things. One, it's not your fault. Don't you ever blame yourself because it's all on him. You did nothing to invite his criticism or his verbal attacks, and you didn't fail to meet his expectations because his expectations are fucking impossible to meet. Sounds like Garrett knows, right? And he also says, and two, if you ever need anything at all, I want you to call me, okay? If you need to talk or if you want to leave him and you need someone to help you pack or move or whatever, call me. Or if he does something and you need help, for fuck's sake, call me. Can you promise to do that? Cindy looks stunned, completely and utterly stunned. Her blue eyes are glassy and she starts blinking fast as if she's trying to ward off tears. The kitchen becomes silent as a funeral home. She just stares at me, blinking. And after an eternity, she nods and says, thank you. So very different reaction in the book from Cindy as well. And now in the reaction from Thanksgiving, I have one other thing to say. And then I'll talk about a few changes that have to do with Hannah a bit here. But on the way home, they still have that conversation. He is driving this time though, because he's not having like a panic attack in the same way. But he does end up like sharing like Cindy is being hit and Hannah's being, I thought that might be it. I saw her wrists in the kitchen. And then Garrett says she was scared of me. And Hannah's like, what are you talking about? She flinched away from me. I mean it. My mom was jumpy and so was I. But fuck, I can't believe she thought I was capable of it. And Hannah's like, honey, I think she's probably scared whenever someone comes near her. She's jumpy and nervous. And Hannah admits, I was like that for a long time after my rape around strangers or people in public. Well, unless you're there to play bodyguard. Or even in public, like she won't go in those places if she didn't have him with. So then he feels like he's going to cry and Hannah's just being really chill and everything. And he's calmed down. And then we have the same kind of talk as a book a bit of like, what if I'm capable of hurting someone? Hannah goes through this thing of like, what if I slept with every guy on the hockey team? And he's like, what? Why would you do that? And she's like, no, what would you do if you found out I was cheating on you? And he says, I'd walk out the door. And she's like, that's it? You wouldn't hit me? You wouldn't slap me? And he's like, of course I wouldn't. She's like, exactly. Because you're not like him. No matter how angry, you wouldn't hit someone just because. And she says, I'm not saying you're incapable of violence. Everyone is capable of it. I'm saying you wouldn't hurt someone you love, at least not intentionally. So anyway, then Hannah asks him to pull over. Because again, this time he's driving. And she says, because I want to kiss you and I can't do that when your eyes are on the road. So very safe. We love it. Now, here's the thing that I understand why they didn't put this in the show. Because it wasn't emotionally the time. However, it leads to the pattern that I'm reiterating from like the previous one. These two, because their relationship started as friendship and then as like, you know, trying out sex things for Hannah, they are very like physical touch characters. And they're kissing and her praising him. She's saying all these affirming things to him. She's like, you're not like him. You'll never be like him. You're a good person. You're honest and kind and compassionate. And then she says, I mean, don't get me wrong. You're a total dick, but it's a tolerable kind of dick. And she just keeps saying like, the only thing you two have in common is you're both gifted hockey players. And that's it. You're not like him. And so then they end up having sex in his car. And again, I get it. I get why this wasn't appropriate in the emotions of the show. However, I think it's really beautiful because after she confirms him, they end up fucking in the car. And there's this line that he to himself says, I've fucked girls in my car before, but I've never made love to one. And I think that's an important difference to highlight with someone like Garrett because he is changed by Hannah. She's making him feel like worthy in so many ways and undoing so many of the damaging words that Phil has said to him. And I just think that it is so beautiful. And yeah, I love them so much. So that is the stuff in the deal that I think is most important they left out. Oop, with Garrett, sorry, there's a couple other things to mention. So there's also the change for Hannah. So because Hannah Wright isn't working with Justin in the book, the way that she gets stuck doing a solo is because the guy she's working on the duet with, Cass, and their pianist, Mary Jane, Cass ends up convincing Mary Jane to ditch her. And so Hannah gets dropped by her duet partner and her pianist 2 weeks before the showcase is supposed to happen. Or I think it is still called the showcase in there, right? It's just not the pop showcase. It's the senior showcase or something like that. And so what happens is that her instructor had said, I tried to warn you not to do a duet with Cass. This always happens every year. So they offer her, you can pick any of the instruments you want. We'll get you whatever rehearsal time you want, but you're going to have to do it on your own. So that's what happens is she gets dropped by that asshole to have to do it herself. So that's the main Hannah change that's happening during these 2 episodes, is that it isn't that Justin sang a song with P lyrics. It's that Cass convinces Mary Jane to ditch her. And those are the main changes there. Then to get into a few things with the score. Now, I didn't want to spend too much time getting into this yet, because we don't know what stuff they will put in the next season. Maybe some of these changes that I'm calling out, we will get when we spend more time with Allie and Dean in their POVs. So that beginning part of episode 6 where we focus on them, I just wanted to call out a couple of things that I haven't seen yet, but I'm going to hold back the rest because we don't know. There are a few more things I'll talk about in the final 2 episodes that have to do with Allie and Dean and some changes they made. But just the main things I want to mention is that Dean is offering rebound sex while they end up watching a movie together. They do smoke and drink a little, and then they end up having sex twice that night. There isn't any call me later. She has sex with Dean that night. And he, the next day, she's really regretful about it. Allie even has a thought that she should have had rebound sex with Tucker instead. Wanted to point that out. And then also something I don't think they've talked about. Tell me if I'm wrong, because maybe they do. But we also get what Dean is going to school for. All of his family is lawyers. So he's a poli-sci major on a pre-law path. He is very close with both Summer and Nick, and they talk to each other pretty often. Important to know. Also, something to do with Sean. Sean is continually trying to fix things with her. He wants her back, but she's tired of all of the breakups. So she tells him pretty early on in this book, she says, I slept with someone the other day. She doesn't tell him who she's sleeping with, but to get Sean to back off of her, she says that she slept with someone else. And though he ends up saying I forgive you, I still want you back, she isn't trying to hide it to spare Sean's feelings. In fact, she tells him to pretty much purposely hurt his feelings and get him to chill the fuck out, right? That is kind of what she's doing there. So that isn't hidden. Then I think I might say that other one until later, but then also Dean is the one begging to fuck her. So for a good long while, they have that night where they sleep together twice, and there was something about it that Dean just really loved, this connection, the banter that they had, and he's the one kind of begging to fuck her again. Now in the show, he is continually being come do this, but I mean straight up he'll call and say, I want to fuck you again. Let's get together and fuck. He will say that. And I understand why they make those changes to him a bit. But those are just the first few things I want to mention about Allie and Dean that might be a bit different because we just don't know where they're going to go with that one. And I don't want to start throwing stuff out there and have it be spoilers for anyone when, we just don't know what will happen. Now, my thoughts on these changes that are being made and why I'm feeling less enthusiastic about them as we go on, right? So I've now watched a few people's recaps who've read the books and watched the show. And what's funny to me, in all honesty, is seeing how quickly people kind of fall for the thing again that oh, it's no big deal that they're taking out a lot of the sex, or that they've changed the attitude of the characters or made those differences, right? Because something that I always come back to with these is that if you don't like the reactions of the character who they are and how they do things, why did you pick those books, right? Because I gotta tell you, upon rereading the deal, I still love Garrett and Hannah as they are. They have a much sassier relationship with one another. They have a much sexier relationship with one another. And it is emotional sex. Like, gosh, there's a scene where after they're together and they're having sex, like Garrett cannot like contain himself. He's so into Hannah, and it's so hot because he's literally like, I need you to talk to me about your grandma while they're fucking, because he's like, I can't contain it with her. I love her. And he's just so obsessed with her. And I think that's romantic. Also, I love that he opens up easier to her. They talk about things sooner and in more depth. And the Garrett that they've chosen on the show, they make him so broody, which I wasn't really thinking about the first time, because I think Belle looks amazing. I easily am picturing him as Garrett. Like, I feel it. And when they have their banter, when he's calling her Wellesley, when he's smiling, when he's with the guys, I feel it. But they chose to make him more broody and less talking about his feelings, when Garrett in the books is very good at that. Okay? He's very good at it. Now, again, because that's the style of character they went with him, when we get to the stuff with his dad, with the stuff with Cindy, we can't all of a sudden see him changing that up, right? And acting differently about it to suit my needs, right? We've chosen this way to portray him. Belle is portraying him a certain way, and they're sticking with that. It seems consistent as it goes. However, I actually like the relationship between Garrett and Hannah better in the books. And there's lots of people pointing out the, like, I don't know, the more sluttiness of it, the terms that they use for things in one another. And a lot of that brings it back to, like, they are 20, turning 21 in this book, okay? We haven't even gotten to Garrett's 21st birthday, actually, in the book yet. His birthday is literally, the New Year's Day, I believe, is Garrett's birthday, or it's January 1st or January 2nd, can't remember. So he isn't even 21 yet. They still use fake IDs in here. I understand why the show like didn't want to point that out or have to deal with that stuff, but they are still kids, okay? That still makes this new adult romance. I already got in that discussion, another one, but I just mean, that doesn't mean you are mentally mature yet. And I think there are big emotions they're dealing with. And the Garrett of the show, he does, to me, read more like a 29-year-old man that Belmont actually is. Like, that's how that emotional suppression is so firmly in place. They've chosen the stoic path for him. And when you reread the deal, there's so many moments where Garrett's the one who he's able to be emotionally sensitive. He's very honest with his hookups, and people can feel like that's sleazy or gross, but he's being honest with people. Like, how is he being an asshole by telling Kendall, like, I've told you what this is, you keep calling. Of course he's going to still sleep with the girl who wants to sleep with him. Like, that doesn't all of a sudden make him a douche and we had to fix everything, right? And in fact, they still, we said they still keep his fuck with Kendall in the show, and with him kind of messing around with another girl too. Which, like, if they still have that there, why are they not also putting in some of his good qualities? Because Garrett in the book does have a lot of good qualities. Like I said, he is so willing to talk with Hannah about things, and he's someone she's open up to more than anyone except for Allie when they're still friends. But one of the and of all those changes that I listed, the one I wish they did change, even if they don't have Garrett be as fully emotive as he is in the book, I find those are the choices you've made. I think it's kind of unforgivable that Garrett didn't tell Hannah what they were walking into. She hasn't fully told him all of the messiness that happened in the show either, but he does know that she was raped. He does know that, things are bad in her hometown. I think that was the appropriate time, as it is in the book, for him to say what his dad did. Because taking her home to Thanksgiving, to the home of someone who domestically abused him, who physically and verbally abused him, I don't like that. I don't. And it became one of the first like hardliner things for me upon rewatch that, again, I get it. They don't do the pages and pages of Garrett pouring out what he watched his mom go through, all the incidents of his dad hurting him. His dad has broken his nose before. His dad has broken ribs before. I understand if they don't list all that out. But Hannah has shared her biggest trauma, her most terrifying thing, and she was able to be like, hey, you don't have to be all, fall over me for this. I just am letting you know. I needed him to say what his dad had done to him to Hannah before they went home for Thanksgiving, because I think she deserved to have that background before walking into a scenario like that. Did he not think about if she would be triggered if there had been something, just because she was raped and not like domestically abused? Like she says in the book in that one part, like, it's why, being in big crowds or being around people or the like violence of it is why it's difficult for me. Why couldn't Garrett share at least one piece? Like all he had to say is like, my dad used to hit me. He's saying he can change. What do you think? And to me, that was the perfect place to say that, because in Hannah, where she says like, people can change, you can give them a second chance. That just feels so insensitive knowing what had happened to Garrett, but Hannah doesn't know. In the same way that Logan doesn't know when he's like, I think you're just being a snooty rich kid who has daddy issues, and I'm trying to help these kids who need this money, right? That's fine if you didn't want to tell Logan, but the relationship between Hannah and Garrett is supposed to be deeper than that. And to me, it is one of the big strengths of this book. For all the flaws other people have with it, which I still gave it 5 stars on reread, I don't care, I adored it, is how well these two communicate, at least about their trauma. They communicate very well about that. And I'm a little bit miffed that Garrett in the show couldn't even give a little piece of it. Like he made it just sound like it's complicated. My mom is dead. My dad and I are complicated, right? For all we know, she could feel the same way that Logan doesn't, just think that it's rich kid constipation, about their dad. So anyway, I won't harp on it. I'll let it go. But to me, that's the big change because it alters so many things. Like by not having Garrett and Hannah talk deeper about those things, it changes stuff later. And I don't think it would have changed as much in the show because Hannah could still then be going to this knowing, but also understand that if I double squeeze your hand to leave, like what it really means, right? Like she's emotionally intelligent enough to be like, okay, well, if this place doesn't make you comfortable, you tell me, we go, right? So yeah, that's kind of the biggest one for me. All the rest of it I still really love the show. I love how they do it. I love, of course, seeing them be more comfortable with each other, just the little things, right? Her wearing his sweater, her waiting at his place for him to show up, him gonna like take a nap while she's playing. That stuff is like right from the book, except she's on the phone with him. Like he's laying on his bed and is like, play for me. Otherwise that scene is like the same. Again, they're having more sex in the book. It's totally fine. They don't put that all in there. But the key sex scene I wish they did have was the one in the car when she affirms him and then they have this super emotional sex in the backseat. Like it is the most emotional car fuck I've ever read. It really is. But yeah, I get it. Maybe the tone wasn't there. But there's something about them seeking comfort and the way that she verbally affirms him and speaks against those lies of his father. And then she kisses him and they end up fucking. And in his words, he says, I fucked girls in my car, but I've never made love to one. Like that is the emotional intimacy I'm talking about, where like you're not trusting us enough to see what's going on there, right? You're feeling like you need to sanitize certain things that just didn't need it, So yeah. Anyway, I will wrap this one up. So again, thank you so much for being here, for sticking it out. There will be one more edition of this where I'll go over episodes 7 and 8, where I will definitely have some harsher things to say. I can tell you that. Having finished my reread of the deal, I just have to rewatch those last 2 episodes. I think that vital change I talked about now that disappoints me, we really see the effects of it in episodes 7 and 8. And I truly, truly hope that we're not done with Garrett and Hannah's journey. I know we're going to see them in more episodes, but I hope that there's a few key scenes I hope we still get in the future. But it does appear, based on what they've said casting wise, that the guy playing Phil won't be back. So I think we're just supposed to be like, oh, well, everything's done with Phil now. That was Garrett's, thing with him. And I fundamentally don't agree with that. Like, we're not done with Phil at this point, if that's all they're going to show of him. I mean, I know there's another episode, another scene with him still, but that's not enough. It's not enough stuff yet. So anyway, thank you for watching, my friends, and I'll see you next time.